I'm Leanne Tran, psychologist who's worked with families whose kids don't fit the mould for almost 20 years. I've worked with children for decades, but I know parents are the real change makers when it comes to their kids. Having 3 kids of my own means I know it's not easy. Parent Like a Psychologist is all about simplifying how you support your kids with psychology information filtered through years of experience to take you from overwhelmed to confident. Come on in. So welcome everybody to this episode of Parent Like a Psychologist. I'm very excited to have a guest with us today who can talk about the experiences that lots of our children have, but with the hindsight of adult perspective. So welcome, Jeremiah.
Hi,
So
Leanne. Thank you.
you're welcome. So Jeremiah Hartmann Tesselriro.
Tesorero. Yeah,
Okay, good.
you got
Um,
it.
yeah. I'm not great with names. I'll often forget the names of people that I have in the room right in front of me, mix up kids' names with adult names. So it's just a general nightmare, but glad I got it right. Um, I would love to hear a little bit about you and what you do with your life right now, which can
hmm
kind of set the scene for us to then go
Yeah,
backwards and look at your experiences.
fantastic. Yeah, so I'm self-employed. I have been self-employed since 2013, 14, and I'm a presenter. I'm a host, and so I'm a communications expert. And people will involve me into either delivering messaging to businesses or even hosting events. And so anything that involves me connecting with an audience or a live
Mhm.
audience is my specialty.
Okay, great. And so we have talked that before recording that you have ADHD. Is that
Yes.
how you refer to it, or do you say that you're an ADHDer or
Oh, I call it
brain
ADA.
type?
I'll say ADA.
Okay.
Yeah, the D word in ADHD does like the last word does have a sort of a bitter taste to it. uh,
Yeah. Yep.
Although there's a lot about campaigning to change the name of it, but it's and now neurodivergent is quite a popular way of describing what's going on in other people's minds that compared to others. But it's certainly something there that's shaping, has shaped my life and still shapes my life.
Yeah.
And there's nothing much, as much as there's medication and coaching and exercise, and nutrition and sleep, and all of these things are going to be crucial for anybody, but as vital as with those with ADHD. And when they go outside of that, it does, the complications start to be more pronounced.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so how has having ADHD shaped your journey to where you are now?
Oh, profoundly. Where I am now is, I'm grateful of where I am now and what I'm doing for what I am as for work. I've got 2 kids under 3, and I'm a
Hmm.
sole breadwinner for my family, and I'm earning a living and growing a family. And that itself, if I was to call myself up, early in my early 20s, I wouldn't believe it. I wouldn't imagine that my life was going to be like that. I find it interesting when I meet others who are in their young 20s and they're already on track to doing something in their life. And, in my early 20s, I was certainly not that. I didn't have much idea about who I was or what my life was going to be. I was very wishy washy. And that was even being pre diagnosed. And I believe that getting diagnosed later in my 20s had changed the trajectory of where I was going in my life. And I'm very grateful of that trajectory. Like it was quite, it's like, it'd be a marker in my life of when I was diagnosed and when I wasn't.
Mm. So you were diagnosed in your 20s.
Yeah, early
How?
20s by myself,
Yeah,
or not
okay.
by myself, but through my own volition. I was diagnosed as a child,
Hmm.
unbeknown to me. I remember going to clinics, being pulled out of school for going to see doctors and things a lot. And I didn't think much of it. I thought, okay, cool, I'm getting out of school. All right, it's cool. I answered some questions. But as a kid, I didn't have the, you know, you know, my idea of what was happening there. And I know that my mum later in, like when I was diagnosed, it was a big thing. It was one of those who've been diagnosed later in life and then realizing that there is something else going on there that's shaping the way that my life is. And it's a huge quantum leap of thought. And I remember my mother explaining to me that, yeah, we knew you had ADHD or you were diagnosed young, but I didn't want you, in devil's advocate, looking back, my mother didn't know much about it.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't know much about medicine or the meds back then. Didn't know much. Really, it was the early 80s, like
Mm.
1985, 96, 87. And like even now, parents might go, there's not enough information or support. Imagine it back then. And
Mm.
so it wasn't talked about or spoken about or made me aware that I was different. Mum said, I didn't want you to feel any different than anyone else. And I can understand being a parent now, you don't want to make your child feel like they're inadequate in anything. At first, that was really shocking for me because it was like this big secret. Like I was like, oh, wow, you mean like my life felt like a controlled falling down the stairs, and but all the way I could have maybe known. I've come to peace with that now.
Mm.
And it's me leaving home and when I was in the early 20s, and I really didn't have much of a structure of what was going on and what I wanted to do. And I thought if I leave home and travel around, I might find something. And one of those things was that no matter where I went, I noticed a certain pattern of things that were happening in my life that were really obvious, and it really bothered me a lot. I was quite depressed by that. I was like, can't go anywhere, and the same things would happen. The same traits and characteristics of what I didn't know then were ADHD traits and characteristics. So that's the operating system of how I think and how the brain works. And I
Mm.
began writing these down and journaling and saying, these are things that keep coming up over and over again. And then through my own exploration of understanding and reading and doing some research, and ADHD kept popping up. And
Right.
I I thought that's a bit odd because I knew some people in my class who had ADHD and I didn't like them. I didn't know anything.
Right.
I didn't think I was like them. I didn't know much, like, didn't connect with them on any way. And, later on, I'll understand that, there's different ways that ADHD is expressed. It just was like, that's strange. So I ended up calling a number online at that time. I was living in WA. I'm from Sydney, so I was living in WA at that time, and there was a coach, and I thought this is interesting, so I'll just have a phone call. And this coach was someone who was instrumental in helping me getting diagnosed.
Mm.
But we had this conversation. He says, I'll let you talk for a little bit, but I'm going to then give you an idea about who I think you are based on, where you've been, like his understanding of ADHD.
Right.
And I didn't think anyone could summarize my life, but in that conversation, he did. And like very accurately, like not like around the rough around the edge. It was like, and it hit home like in the solar plexus I cried on the phone. I really bawled my eyes out because I don't think anyone I've spoken to, countless people, specialists,
Yeah.
psychologists, doctors, people who probably weren't aware of what ADHD was. And then he just hit it so true. And so what does that mean? He says, well, I'm a coach. I help people with ADHD. I help. And we went on this journey of uncovering a lot of those skills and traits and abilities that are innate to me already and have been part of my life, which was communicating and speaking and talking to large groups of people. And these are things that have always been present in my life. I just didn't pay attention to. And so I'm really grateful of that experience because that's what's brought me to where I'm doing what I'm doing now.
Mm. That's so amazing to hear your experience, and it's a common one, I think, that of people diagnosed. I say late in life. In your
Mm,
20s, it's not
mm,
really late, but it is compared. I work with children, so it seems late. But um, and yeah, having that, it's an interesting conflict, isn't it, between our parents' natural instinct to want us
yeah,
to feel like we fit in, but then always, or people often talk about that experience of not feeling like they fit in or not being seen and
yeah,
feeling different.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
absolutely true. Like my schooling and adolescent years were very much like that, and it just makes sense. Like just knowing that, even just growing up as an adolescent, there's weird things going on in your body, and you want to feel like you're connecting, and you don't know what's going on. But even just at school, I found it very challenging to follow what was going on in the class. Very challenging to stay focused.
Mhm.
To stay, although there were other subjects that I like was exceptional in.
Yeah.
such as history or um, such as English, and the arts. They were, and it was one of the funny things that I remember reading my report card. I think it was like the principal did a little sign off saying, if only, Jeremiah was, as consistent across all these other subjects as to not just these ones, and apply himself in that. And there's always that feeling that you just got to apply yourself like you do to other
Exactly.
things, then
Yeah.
everything would be fine. And that was just one of the things that I just didn't understand why I couldn't have that same enthusiasm for other things in other
Mm.
subjects.
Is that kind of what you found with those patterns that were repeating as you were traveling around and wondering why or I wonder if you were kind of wondering what it was about you that was making these things kind of continually happen?
Yeah, like the way that handling, like feeling disorganized, like just feeling
Hmm.
disorganized, not having a structure, and feeling that there's, like, I call it the controlled falling down the stairs, because it just feels like this. You're just trying to figure things out and leaving things or forgetting things to the last minute, or having just not having the social cues or understanding social cues in social environments, that you just would just go, oh, I really just messed that up. Or remunerating, if that's the word, I can't remember the correct terminology, where you're just thinking about something over and over again, about a
Mm-hmm.
mistake that you've made that is easily, like, it's a simple mistake, but it has great consequences. And
Yeah.
these things that were really troublesome, because it's like, it's an easy mistake. How would you not fix that? How would you not
Hmm.
see that? Things that are very obvious, which is, again, if you speak with people with ADHD, you'll notice that adders tend to pick up things that are not really obvious for most people.
Mm.
And people go, wow, they didn't see it like that. Or, wow, oh, you really figured that out. Yeah, that was, yeah, wow. And then there'll be times there'll be really obvious things. And I just go, I don't know how I missed that. Like, how did I miss that? It's this paradox of ADHD.
Yeah. Interesting. But I think what I hear in your story too, which is useful for parents, is that idea of finding your strengths and passions is what can
Absolutely.
really set you
Yeah.
on a path.
And your
Yeah.
self-esteem, like just the feeling, like
Mm.
with the ADHD growing up, it felt like I was on the back foot of most things, not
Hmm.
really. And of course, negative things would stand out the most, like you can't focus, or you talk too much, or you're too loud, or you're a bit too full on, or you can't be reliable, or like you're always going to be aloof, or you're off for the fairies. And these are things that, you just wear as like, okay, I guess that's me then, and then just play that card. But finding something that you are good at that no one else can do, that is valuable or inspirational, that changes the whole way that I feel about myself. Knowing that, like when I joined a public speaking club for the first time, my coach recommended that. It was very few times in my life where I had attended this club and there were some great speakers, and they had an opportunity to do a who's in the room, like, it's someone in the room who like to come up and say, we've got 7 minutes to talk about yourself. It's the most obvious topic to talk
Hmm.
about. And I just remember feeling that of course you get nervous and things, but you walk up there and you look at the faces and you talk on the microphone. And the club president of that time, who was happened to be the founder of iNet. He started a
Hmm.
chapter in Perth of Toastmasters.
Right.
And he pulled me aside afterwards and asked me if I was, how long I've been speaking for. And I told him I hadn't done this before. He says, look, I
Yeah.
think you've got really good, qualities that make a good speaker. And we got this competition that's in 2 weeks. He says, I'm not going to give you the hard sell, but it'd be great if you could, sign up and join a club and you can get in this competition. I think you'd do really good. And that moment was really strange. I didn't know who he was at that point, but it was like
Hmm.
someone who only knew me for a very limited time, who has said something positive about me,
Yeah. Yeah.
and something that wasn't just, I'm just going to, butter you up so I can get you to join our club. He was like, I genuinely think that you've got great qualities to make a good speaker. And, I was like, wow. So I joined that club, and in that competition came, I won that competition. And it
Right.
was just that, verified that there is something there that I really was enjoying about that. Like just I didn't get awards for the best student thing. So I didn't get awards for, and I was terrible at, like I was a great track and field, but I was just, my hand-eye coordination. I still to this day, not good at ball sports, darts,
Right.
pool. Like I just not going to work. However, finding something like that it just changed everything so much. And it was such a great feeling when I had people who were there for months, some of years, and that approached me. How do you, when you're on there, and I noticed how you do this and that, how do you do that? Like, and my answer at that point was, I don't know. And it was this weird duality, because it's like in class, teachers say, how come you can't just, complete the task? I don't know.
Yeah.
How come you can't just sit still? I don't know. All right. So it's the same thing. I just didn't know. It just was a natural thing. And that's what, like, if anything's working, and it gives you like the opposite to dysfunction, I would certainly encourage any parents to identify that in their children. And it is there. I believe that, I have this belief that myself, you, me, our kids, we all come equipped with something. Some will have more than others in other things. Yeah. It's about like knowing that it will show itself, and to start fostering that, and telling a child that, yes, there might be things that you're not going to be great at, and that's okay. But look at what you're really good at, and look at what you're accomplishing in this. And that's really valuable, and that's really strong. And that does a lot. I found that, later in my 20s, and took a while to undo a lot of that angst of just those early years of school and growing up as a teen. But my knowledge now, looking at my children, who are I've got 2 kids under 3. And again, I noticed those traits that I go, oh, is that in my oldest son? Like, is that going to be something that might be things I can identify with? To see those little special things and just go, okay, let's keep pushing. Let's put a little bit of emphasis on that, give them praise in that, because yes, it'll be inevitable. They're going to be having trouble in other things in life.
Yeah, I think that's such wise advice. And it's a theme I often cover in my work with parents, and the courses I have online is about, because we can kind of tend to go with trying to improve things kids are having challenge with.
Yeah.
And always that kind of remediation or fixing approach. Yeah. Whereas if it can be just as important to just focus on the things that kids enjoy and are good at, to help them develop those passions. And
absolutely.
The skills aren't always, like you mentioned, everyone's got strengths and sparks. Absolutely, I agree. It's not always easy to find out like what you want it to be in your life. You mentioned finding yours a little bit later, whereas you meet some people in their 20s who've got it already. I think the more you can explore those things about your passions and interests and strengths, the more likely you are to find it.
Absolutely. And you made a good point about not one thing I remember my coach saying was that those things that I struggle with, I'm frustrated with, and I want to improve, he says, it's not going to get any, like the improvement level that you're expecting to get, it's not going to get like that. He says, however, in this area, if you put that energy and, that devotion, he says that's where, and it will, like, that's where you leverage that. Those other things are not going to be your strengths, and they're not. And just knowing that the way the brain is wired it's not aligned to be, it just can't be improved in that way. And it helps me, there are days where I get really angry at myself because I just need it to do that. I need my brain to do the things I need it to do. And with ADHD, it's not consistent. There's always this inconsistency. Like some days it's really great. Some days it's not really great. Some days I'm really alert. Some days I'm not really alert. Some days I can manage multiple tasks and some others I can't. And that's the paradox of having ADHD. But knowing that there's things that you're just really good at that bring value to others. That's the most important thing. Like it must bring value to others, because that makes us useful in society. It makes us useful in, and helping others is fundamental. One of the qualities I enjoy the most is coaching other people. Right. And I coach others in public speaking and training and helping people with nerves, or helping people with social anxiety, or not knowing how to have conversations. And these are things I've developed along my way in my learning. And I find with my experience, I'm sure others who have ADHD.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Parent Like a Psychologist. If you found it helpful, please share on Instagram so other parents can benefit too, and tag me at Leanne Tran Psychology so that I can say a big thank you. Head over to leannetran.com.au to join the village for bite-sized psychology tips straight to your inbox. I really hope this podcast has brought a new perspective and you a step closer towards a calm parent and a thriving child. Have a delightful day.